Maya's Chen pressed her eye against the scope, her breath forming tiny clouds in the frigid mountain air. 3 miles below, the convoy moved like ants across the desert highway, black vehicles in perfect formation, unaware that death watched. From the rocky outcrop above, her finger rested on the trigger of the Barrett M82, a weapon that could punch through armor plating at this distance. She'd been alone on this ridge for 36 hours, surviving on protein bars and melted snow, waiting for this moment. No backup, no extraction team, no radio chatter from command. Just Maya, her rifle, and a target that could change the course of a war. The lead vehicle slowed as it approached the checkpoint. Through her scope, she could see the passenger window rolling down, a figure leaning out to speak with the guards. The intelligence was accurate. This was definitely the convoy. Her target sat in the third vehicle, behind bulletproof glass that wouldn't matter at all to the .50 caliber, round-chambered in her rifle. Maya's heart rate dropped to 50 beats per minute, a trick she'd learned from her father before the war consumed everything she'd ever loved. The wind had died to almost nothing. Range, 2,847 meters. Elevation adjustment, 14 clicks up. Windage, 2 clicks right for the barely perceptible breeze. She exhaled slowly, finger taking up the slack in the trigger. In 10 seconds, she would fire the shot that would either save her country or damn it forever. The intelligence briefing had been clear: killing this target would end the occupation, but failure would mean the execution of every resistance fighter in the captured territories. Maya had never missed a shot that mattered. The crosshairs settled on her target's chest as he emerged from the vehicle. General Viktor Kozlov, the architect of the Eastern Coalition's brutal occupation, the man responsible for the deaths of 2 million civilians, including Maya's entire family. She'd been tracking him for 8 months, waiting for this perfect opportunity. 3. The rifle bucked against her shoulder with tremendous force, the muzzle blast echoing off the canyon walls like thunder. Through the scope, she watched the .50 caliber round streak across the desert in a barely visible line of distorted air. But something was wrong. At the exact moment she fired, a child ran into the road, chasing a ball that had escaped the checkpoint area. General Kozlov, displaying reflexes Maya hadn't anticipated, lunged forward to push the child to safety. The bullet that should have ended his life instead struck the armored vehicle behind him, punching through metal and glass in a shower of sparks. Maya's perfect shot, the shot that was supposed to change everything, had missed its target completely, but it changed everything anyway. The bullet's impact triggered a chain reaction Maya couldn't have foreseen. As the armor-piercing round tore through the convoy's communication vehicle, it severed the encrypted transmission cables that connected General Kozlov's forces to the Eastern Coalition's Central Command. In that instant, 17 forward operating bases across the occupied territories lost contact with their command structure. Maya watched through her scope as chaos erupted below. Soldiers poured from the vehicles, scanning the ridgeline for threats they couldn't see. Kozlov himself had rolled behind cover, unhurt but shaken, and for the first time in 8 months of intelligence gathering, Maya saw him do something unexpected. He cradled the child he'd saved, speaking to her in what appeared to be gentle, reassuring tones. This wasn't the monster from her nightmares. She began breaking down her rifle with practiced efficiency, muscle memory taking over while her mind raced. The communication blackout would last maybe 20 minutes before backup systems came online. But in a war zone, 20 minutes might as well be 20 hours. Resistance cells across the territories would interpret the silence as their signal to strike. Maya had just accidentally triggered the largest coordinated uprising since the occupation began. Her hand shook slightly as she packed the rifle components into her tactical bag, not from cold or adrenaline, but from the weight of realization. She'd been preparing for this moment for so long that she'd never considered what would happen if the perfect shot went imperfect. The resistance would attack simultaneously, believing she'd eliminated Kozlov and that the command structure was in chaos. They would be slaughtered. As she shouldered her pack and began the treacherous descent from the ridge, Maya's satellite radio crackled to life with panicked transmissions from resistance cells across 3 provinces. Her handler, codenamed Phoenix, was trying to reach her through the encrypted channel. Raven, confirm target elimination. Repeat, confirm Kozlov is down. Maya hesitated, her finger hovering over the transmit button. Through the scope, she'd seen Kozlov save that child's life without hesitation, risking his own safety for someone he didn't know. It was an act that didn't fit with the intelligence profiles, the propaganda, or her own burning need for vengeance. Raven, respond immediately. Phoenix Command is preparing for Phase 2. Phase 2 was the coordinated strike. Every resistance fighter across the occupied zone would emerge from hiding to attack infrastructure targets, believing the coalition forces were blind and leaderless. Without confirmation that Kozlov was dead, it would be a massacre. Maya clicked the radio off and continued her descent. The path down the mountain was a maze of loose scree and exposed rock faces that would challenge even an experienced climber. In good weather. In the growing dusk, with temperature dropping toward freezing, it became a gauntlet that demanded her complete focus. Each step had to be calculated, tested, secured before committing her weight. She'd climbed this face twice. During reconnaissance, but always in daylight and never with the pressure of imminent capture. Below, she could hear vehicles racing along the mountain roads, coalition forces spreading out to search every possible escape route. Helicopter rotors whined in the distance. Growing closer, Maya found a narrow ledge behind a cluster of boulders and pressed herself against the cold stone. Through a gap in the rocks, she watched a coalition patrol helicopter sweep the mountainside with spotlights, the beam passing just meters from her position. The downdraft from its rotors sent loose stones rattling down the cliff face. Her phone vibrated with an encrypted message from Phoenix. All teams report ready, awaiting your confirmation for Phase 2 execution. Time critical. Maya closed her eyes and pictured the scene through her scope again. Kozlov pushing the child to safety, covering her with his own body as soldiers scattered for defensive positions. The way he'd spoken to her afterward, checking for injuries with the careful attention of a father, not a genocidal general. Either the intelligence was wrong, or this was the most sophisticated act she'd ever witnessed. The helicopter moved on to search another section of mountainside. Maya waited 10 minutes, then resumed her descent, moving faster now as darkness provided better cover. Her mind kept returning to the child, maybe 7 years old, wearing a faded blue dress, clutching a worn soccer ball. In that split second, Kozlov hadn't hesitated to throw himself into harm's way for her. Maya's father would have done the same thing. Dr. James Chen had been a trauma surgeon before the war, a man who dedicated his life to saving others without regard to politics or nationality. He'd treated coalition soldiers and resistance fighters with equal skill and compassion, right up until the day a coalition airstrike leveled his hospital. Maya had been there, helping in the emergency room when the building came down around them. She'd found his body 3 days later in the rubble. That was when Maya had learned to kill, the memory of her father's gentle hand steadying her nerves. During her first surgery conflicted sharply with the tactical training she'd received from Dmitri, the ex-Spetsnaz operative who'd taught her everything about precision shooting, fieldcraft, and the psychology of warfare. Dmitri had found her in a refugee camp, recognized something in her cold anger that could be shaped into a weapon. Hatred will make you sloppy, he'd told her during their first lesson. Discipline will make you deadly. But now, halfway down a mountain with her perfect shot turned into chaos, Maya wondered if her hatred had already made her sloppy. Had she been so focused on revenge that she'd missed crucial intelligence about her target? Or was Kozlov exactly the monster she believed him to be, and his moment of apparent humanity just strategic theater. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Marcus Webb, the CIA operative who served as liaison between Phoenix Command and the resistance networks. Maya, we're tracking massive coalition communications outages across your sector. Did you take the shot? Resistance cells are mobilizing based on assumed success. Need immediate confirmation. Maya reached a wider ledge and paused to check her equipment. The rifle components were secure, her ammunition inventory was good, and she had enough supplies for 3 days in the field if necessary. But she couldn't stay hidden on this mountain forever, and every minute she delayed put resistance fighters at greater risk. She composed a careful reply to Marcus. Target acquired. Shot taken. Complications at target site. Recommend delay phase. 2 pending confirmation. The response came back within seconds. Negative. Window closing rapidly. Phase 2 initiates in 90 minutes with or without confirmation. Get to extraction point Alpha. Maya stared at the message in disbelief. 90 minutes meant hundreds of resistance fighters would emerge from hiding to attack heavily defended positions, believing they faced a confused, leaderless enemy. Instead, they would face a fully alert coalition force under Kozlov's direct command. Thought it would be a slaughter. She tried calling Phoenix directly, but her handler's phone went straight to voicemail. The resistance command structure had clearly decided that the communication blackout itself was proof enough that Kozlov was dead. They were treating her mission as a success and moving forward with the larger operation that Maya shouldered her pack and continued down the mountain, moving as quickly as she dared in the growing darkness. If she couldn't stop Phase 2 through official channels, she'd have to reach Extraction Point Alpha and convince Marcus Webb directly. He had the authority to delay the operation, but only if she could present compelling evidence that Kozlov was still alive and functional. The problem was that she didn't have any evidence, except her own observation of a single moment of apparent compassion. Against that, she had intelligence reports documenting Kozlov's responsibility for mass civilian casualties, torture facilities, and execution orders. One moment of human behavior didn't outweigh 2 years of documented war crimes. Maybe she was overthinking this. Maybe the man she'd seen save that child was the same man who'd ordered the death of her family and millions of others. People were complicated, capable of both cruelty and kindness, sometimes in the same day. But as Maya navigated the treacherous descent, she couldn't shake the feeling that her perfect shot had revealed something important, something that could change not just the course of a single battle, but the entire trajectory of the war. The extraction point was still 8 miles away through hostile territory. Maya had 90 minutes to reach it, convince Marcus Webb to delay a major operation, and somehow figure out whether General Viktor Kozlov was the monster she'd been trained to kill or something far more complicated. Her phone buzzed one final time before she turned it off to conserve battery and avoid detection. The message was from an unknown number, but the encryption pattern identified it as coming from inside the coalition command structure. The woman on the mountain. We need to talk. Come alone to coordinates 34.7128 N, 86.5861 W tomorrow at sunset. Lives depend on your choice. Maya stared at the message in the dim glow of her phone screen. Someone inside Kozlov's inner circle knew who she was, where she was, and how to reach her through supposedly secure channels. Either this was an elaborate trap, or the situation was even more complicated than she'd realized. She deleted the message and turned off the phone, but the coordinates were already burned into her memory. Tomorrow at sunset, she would have to decide whether to trust an unknown contact with information that could reshape everything she thought she knew about this war. First, though, she had to survive the next 90 minutes and somehow prevent the resistance from walking into a massacre. Maya picked up her pace, half sliding down sections of loose rock, trusting her momentum and balance to carry her safely to the bottom. Behind her, the mountain ridge where she'd taken her imperfect shot disappeared into darkness. The sound of helicopter rotors grew louder as coalition search teams expanded their perimeter. Maya reached the valley floor with 15 minutes to spare, her legs trembling from the rapid descent and her lungs burning in the thin mountain air. The extraction point was an abandoned gas station 3 miles east, where Marcus Webb would be waiting with transportation and, hopefully, the authority to call off Phase 2 before the resistance walked into a trap. She moved through the scrubland at a steady jog, using the sparse vegetation for cover as coalition helicopters swept the area with infrared sensors. The temperature had dropped below freezing, which worked in her favor. The cold ground would mask her heat signature unless the aircraft passed directly overhead. Maya's mind raced through the tactical implications of her failed shot. By now, Kozlov would have restored communications with his forward bases and realized that the blackout had been caused by a sniper attack, not a system failure. He'd also know that the sniper had missed her primary target, which meant she was still out there, still dangerous. More importantly, he'd know that someone had tried to coordinate the communication blackout with a larger operation. Coalition. Intelligence was sophisticated enough to recognize the pattern-eliminate command structure, then launch coordinated attacks during the confusion. They'd be expecting Phase 2. Maya crested a small hill and saw the abandoned gas station in the distance, a dark silhouette against the star-filled sky. No lights, no movement, exactly as planned. But something felt wrong. The building should have shown at least some signs of life. A brief flash of infrared light, a coded radio signal, something to confirm that Marcus was in position. She approached from the south, using a dry creek bed for concealment, and observed the station through her spotting scope. The main building appeared empty, but tire tracks in the dirt indicated recent vehicle activity. Too much activity for a simple pickup operation. Maya's instincts screamed trap, but she was out of alternatives. In 10 minutes, Phase 2 would launch automatically unless Marcus Webb transmitted the abort code to resistance cells across 3 provinces. She had to take the risk. She approached the station's rear entrance, weapon drawn, moving in the precise tactical pattern Dmitri had drilled into her during countless training exercises. The door was unlocked, hanging slightly ajar, another sign that something was wrong. Marcus was too professional to leave obvious security breaches. Inside, Maya found chaos. The safe house had been thoroughly searched, equipment scattered across the floor, furniture overturned. Fresh blood stained the concrete near an overturned chair, not yet dry in the cold air. A single playing card lay in the center of the room. Ace of Spades, a calling card used by Coalition Special Forces to mark successful captures. Maya's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Unknown number, but the ringtone indicated it was coming through the same encrypted channel as the mysterious message from the mountain. She hesitated, then answered. "You're too late for your friend," said a voice she didn't recognize. Male. Slight accent, possibly Russian. Mr. Webb was very informative before he stopped talking. "Where is he?" Maya kept her voice steady, professional. "Alive, for now. As are the 300 resistance fighters currently preparing to attack targets across your operational zone. Phase 2 launches in 7 minutes. Maya felt cold that had nothing to do with the mountain air. "What do you want?" "The same thing. You want to prevent unnecessary deaths. The general would like to meet with you. The coordinates I sent earlier. Tomorrow at sunset. I don't negotiate with war criminals." A pause. Then, Dr. James Chen, trauma surgeon. Killed in the coalition airstrike on St. Mary's Hospital 18 months ago. "You were there when it happened." Maya's breath caught. "How do you, the general, ordered that airstrike personally, but perhaps not for the reasons you believe. Come tomorrow, alone, and learn the truth about your father's death." or don't come, and watch 300 resistance fighters die in the next 6 minutes when they attack positions we've been preparing for all week. The line went dead. Maya stared at her phone, mind reeling. Someone knew intimate details about her past, her motivation, her family. Either coalition intelligence was far more sophisticated than anyone realized, or there was a leak at the highest levels of the resistance. Her phone buzzed with another message, this time from a familiar. Contact Elena Vasquez, a resistance cell leader in the eastern sector. Phase 2 launching in 3 minutes. Weapons hot, targets acquired. This is for Dr. Chen and all the others. Maya's hands shook as she typed a response. Abort, abort, abort. Target still alive. Coalition forces ready for you. But the message bounced back immediately. Elena's phone was already switched off. Radio silence maintained for operational security during the attack. Across 3 provinces, resistance fighters were disappearing their communication devices and moving into position. Maya ran outside and climbed onto the gas station's roof, hoping to get a clear signal to Phoenix Command's emergency frequency. The radio crackled with static, then suddenly came alive with panicked transmissions from resistance units, making contact with coalition forces. Phoenix Base, this is Hammer Team. We are taking heavy fire at the bridge. Repeat, heavy fire. They were ready for us. Viper Squad to Phoenix. Ambush at the water treatment plant. Request immediate support. Phoenix Base, Phoenix Base. This is Wolfpack Leader. Coalition forces in prepared positions. They knew we were coming. Maya listened in horror as the coordinated resistance attack turned into a series of desperate firefights. The coalition had indeed been ready, with overlapping fields of fire, pre-positioned reinforcements, and what sounded like comprehensive intelligence about resistance target selections. Her perfect shot had done more than miss its target. It had triggered a catastrophe. The radio fell silent as individual units either achieved their objectives, retreated, or were destroyed. Maya wouldn't know the full extent of casualties until much later, but early reports suggested that Phase 2 had been a disaster for the resistance. Maya stared at the message in disbelief. 90 minutes meant hundreds of resistance fighters would emerge from hiding to attack heavily defended positions, believing they faced a confused, leaderless enemy. Instead, they would face a fully alert coalition force under Kozlov's direct command. Thought it would be a slaughter. She tried calling Phoenix directly, but her handler's phone went straight to voicemail. The resistance command structure had clearly decided that the communication blackout itself was proof enough that Kozlov was dead. They were treating her mission as a success and moving forward with the larger operation. That Maya shouldered her pack and continued down the mountain, moving as quickly as she dared in the growing darkness. If she couldn't stop Phase 2 through official channels, she'd have to reach Extraction Point Alpha and convince Marcus Webb directly. He had the authority to delay the operation, but only if she could present compelling evidence that Kozlov was still alive and functional. The problem was that she didn't have any evidence, except her own observation of a single moment of apparent compassion. Against that, she had intelligence reports documenting Kozlov's responsibility for mass civilian casualties, torture facilities, and execution orders. One moment of human behavior didn't outweigh 2 years of documented war crimes. Maybe she was overthinking this. Maybe the man she'd seen save that child was the same man who'd ordered the death of her family and millions of others. People were complicated, capable of both cruelty and kindness, sometimes in the same day. But as Maya navigated the treacherous descent, she couldn't shake the feeling that her perfect shot had revealed something important, something that could change not just the course of a single battle, but the entire trajectory of the war. The extraction point was still 8 miles away through hostile territory. Maya had 90 minutes to reach it, convince Marcus Webb to delay a major operation, and somehow figure out whether General Viktor Kozlov Was the monster she'd been trained to kill, or something far more complicated? Her phone buzzed one final time before she turned it off to conserve battery and avoid detection. The message was from an unknown number, but the encryption pattern identified it as coming from inside the coalition command structure. The woman on the mountain. We need to talk. Come alone to coordinates 34.7128 N, 86.5861 W tomorrow at sunset. Lives depend on your choice. Maya stared at the message in the dim glow of her phone screen. Someone inside Kozlov's inner circle knew who she was, where she was, and how to reach her through supposedly secure channels. Either this was an elaborate trap, or the situation was even more complicated than she'd realized. She deleted the message and turned off the phone, but the coordinates were already burned into her memory. Tomorrow at sunset, she would have to decide whether to trust an unknown contact with information that could reshape everything she thought she knew about this war. First, though, she had to survive the next 90 minutes and somehow prevent the resistance from walking into a massacre. Maya picked up her pace, half sliding down sections of loose rock, trusting her momentum and balance to carry her safely to the bottom. Behind her, the mountain ridge where she'd taken her imperfect shot disappeared into darkness. The sound of helicopter rotors grew louder as coalition search teams expanded their perimeter. Maya reached the valley floor with 15 minutes to spare, her legs trembling from the rapid descent and her lungs burning in the thin mountain air. The extraction point was an abandoned gas station 3 miles east, where Marcus Webb would be waiting with transportation and, hopefully, the authority to call off Phase 2 before the resistance walked into a trap. She moved through the scrubland at a steady jog, using the sparse vegetation for cover as coalition helicopters swept the area with infrared sensors. The temperature had dropped below freezing, which worked in her favor. The cold ground would mask her heat signature unless the aircraft passed directly overhead. Maya's mind raced through the tactical implications of her failed shot. By now, Kozlov would have restored communications with his forward bases and realized that the blackout had been caused by a sniper attack, not a system failure. He'd also know that the sniper had missed her primary target, which meant she was still out there, still dangerous. More importantly, he'd know that someone had tried to coordinate the communication blackout with a larger operation. Coalition intelligence was sophisticated enough to recognize the pattern, eliminate command structure, then launch coordinated attacks during the confusion. They'd be expecting Phase 2. Maya crested a small hill and saw the abandoned gas station in the distance, a dark silhouette against the star-filled sky. No lights, no movement, exactly as planned. But something felt wrong. The building should have shown at least some signs of life. A brief flash of infrared light, a coded radio signal, something to confirm that Marcus was in position. She approached from the south, using a dry creek bed for concealment, and observed the station through her spotting scope. The main building appeared empty, but tire tracks in the dirt indicated recent vehicle activity. Too much activity for a simple pickup operation. Maya's instincts screamed trap, but she was out of alternatives. In 10 minutes, Phase 2 would launch automatically unless Marcus Webb transmitted the abort code to resistance cells across 3 provinces. She had to take the risk. She approached the station's rear entrance, weapon drawn, moving in the precise tactical pattern Dmitri had drilled into her during countless training exercises. The door was unlocked, hanging slightly ajar, another sign that something was wrong. Marcus was too professional to leave obvious security breaches. Inside, Maya found chaos. The safe house had been thoroughly searched, equipment scattered across the floor, furniture overturned. Fresh blood stained the concrete near an overturned chair, not yet dry in the cold air. A single playing card lay in the center of the room. Ace of Spades, a calling card used by Coalition Special Forces to mark successful captures. Maya's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Unknown number, but the ringtone indicated it was coming through the same encrypted channel as the mysterious message from the mountain. She hesitated, then answered. "You're too late for your friend," said a voice she didn't recognize. Male. Slight accent, possibly Russian. Mr. Webb was very informative before he stopped talking. "Where is he?" Maya kept her voice steady, professional. "Alive, for now. As are the 300 resistance fighters currently preparing to attack targets across your operational zone. Phase 2 launches in 7 minutes. Maya felt cold that had nothing to do with the mountain air. "What do you want?" "The same thing. You want to prevent unnecessary deaths. The general would like to meet with you. The coordinates I sent earlier. Tomorrow at sunset. I don't negotiate with war criminals." A pause. Then, Dr. James Chen, trauma surgeon. Killed in the coalition airstrike on St. Mary's Hospital 18 months ago. "You were there when it happened." Maya's breath caught. "How do you, the general, ordered that airstrike personally, but perhaps not for the reasons you believe. Come tomorrow, alone, and learn the truth about your father's death. Or don't come, and watch 300 resistance fighters die in the next 6 minutes when they attack positions we've been preparing for all week." The line went dead. Maya stared at her phone, mind reeling. Someone knew intimate details about her past, her motivation, her family. Either coalition intelligence was far more sophisticated than anyone realized, or there was a leak at the highest levels of the resistance. Her phone buzzed with another message, this time from a familiar. "Contact Elena Vasquez, a resistance cell leader in the eastern sector. Phase 2 launching in 3 minutes. Weapons hot, targets acquired." This is for Dr. Chen and all the others. Maya's hands shook as she typed a response. "Abort, abort, abort. Target still alive. Coalition forces ready for you." But the message bounced back immediately. Elena's phone was already switched off. Radio silence maintained for operational security during the attack. Across 3 provinces, resistance fighters were disappearing their communication devices and moving into position. Maya ran outside and climbed onto the gas station's roof, hoping to get a clear signal to Phoenix Command's emergency frequency. The radio crackled with static, then suddenly came alive with panicked transmissions from resistance units, making contact with coalition forces. "Phoenix Base, this is Hammer Team. We are taking heavy fire at the bridge. Repeat, heavy fire. They were ready for us. Viper Squad to Phoenix. Ambush at the water treatment plant. Request immediate support. Phoenix Base, Phoenix Base. This is Wolfpack Leader. Coalition forces in prepared positions. They knew we were coming." Maya listened in horror as the coordinated resistance attack turned into a series of desperate firefights. The coalition had indeed been ready, with overlapping fields of fire, pre-positioned reinforcements, and what sounded like comprehensive intelligence about resistance target selections. Her perfect shot had done more than miss its target. It had triggered a catastrophe. The radio fell silent as individual units either achieved their objectives, retreated, or were destroyed. Maya wouldn't know the full extent of casualties until much later, but early reports suggested that Phase 2 had been a disaster for the resistance. As if to emphasize the point, her phone buzzed with a message from the same unknown contact. 47 resistance fighters killed, 83 captured. The general's offer remains open. Tomorrow, sunset, the coordinates provided. Come alone and learn why this war isn't what you think it is. Maya climbed down from the roof and surveyed the abandoned gas station one more time, looking for any clues about Marcus Webb's fate or the identity of her mysterious contact. She found a small device hidden behind the building's electrical panel, a sophisticated transmitter that had been broadcasting her location to coalition forces since her arrival. The trap had been even more elaborate than she'd realized. Someone had known she would come here, known about the extraction plan, known about Marcus Webb. The entire operation had been compromised from the beginning. Maya destroyed the transmitter and gathered what supplies she could from the scattered remains of the safe house. Her extraction plan was blown, her handler was captured, and the resistance had suffered a major defeat. She was completely alone in hostile territory, with no way to contact her support network, but she still had the mysterious meeting tomorrow. At sunset, someone claiming to know the truth about her father's death and the real nature of this war wanted to talk. It could be a trap, but it could also be her only chance to understand what was really happening. As Maya prepared to leave the gas station and find shelter for the night, she noticed something she'd missed during her initial search. A small photograph, partially hidden under an overturned desk. She picked it up and studied it in the dim light from her phone. The photo showed a young girl, maybe 10 years old, standing next to a man in a coalition uniform. The man was General Viktor Kozlov, but he looked different, younger, less hardened. The girl was holding his hand and smiling at the camera with the unbridled joy of childhood. On the back of the photo, someone had written in Cyrillic script, Anna Kozlova, age 8, killed in terrorist attack on civilian transport. Sector 7 day 847 of liberation. Maya stared at the photo, her mind racing. Kozlov had a daughter. And according to this photo, she'd been killed by what the coalition classify as a terrorist attack, but what the resistance would call a legitimate military operation against an enemy transport. The picture began to reshape everything Maya thought she knew about her target. The man who'd ordered the airstrike that killed her father had also lost a child to the violence of this war. The monster she'd trained to kill was also a grieving parent. Maya pocketed the photograph and headed into the night, searching for shelter and trying to process the implications of what she'd learned. Tomorrow's meeting had taken on new significance. If someone wanted to show her the truth about this war, she was beginning to suspect that the truth was far more complicated than she'd ever imagined. As she hiked through the darkness toward an abandoned farm complex where she could shelter. Until dawn, Maya's tactical training warred with her growing uncertainty. Dmitri had taught her that successful snipers didn't allow emotional complications to interfere with their missions. The target was the target, regardless of personal history or human complexity. But Maya wasn't sure she was just a sniper anymore. Her perfect shot had missed, triggering a chain of events that revealed the war itself might not be what anyone thought it was. Tomorrow she would either learn the truth or walk into the most sophisticated trap she'd ever encountered. Either way, she would finally get the answers she'd been seeking since the day her father died in the ruins of St. Mary's Hospital. Maya spent the night in the hayloft of an abandoned barn, wrapped in her emergency bivouac and listening to the distant sound of coalition aircraft searching the valley. She'd managed 2 hours of fitful sleep before dawn, her dreams filled with the image of that photograph, General Kozlov's daughter, smiling and innocent, killed by a war that had consumed everything Maya had ever loved. The morning brought new complications. Her satellite radio, monitored on emergency frequencies throughout the night, had picked up fragments of transmissions that painted a grim picture of Phase 2's aftermath. The resistance had lost nearly 60 fighters with over 100 captured. 3 major safe houses had been compromised, and Phoenix Command itself was reportedly under attack by coalition special forces. Maya was now completely cut off from her support network, stranded in hostile territory with no extraction plan and no way to verify the intelligence that had guided her mission. Everything she thought she knew was suspect. She spent the morning studying topographical maps of the area around the coordinates she'd been given: 34.7128 N, 86.5861. The location was a remote valley accessible only by a single dirt road, surrounded by high ridges that would provide excellent observation points for anyone wanting to monitor the area. It was either a perfect place for a private conversation or an ideal killing ground. The rational choice was to ignore the meeting entirely, head for the border, and try to make contact with resistance elements in a neighboring province. But the photo of Anna Kozlova and the cryptic references to her father's death had created questions Maya couldn't ignore. She needed to know the truth, even if seeking it put her life at risk. As she prepared to leave the barn, Maya discovered she wasn't alone. A young woman, maybe 25 years old, was waiting outside with her hands raised in a gesture of surrender. She wore civilian clothes but moved with the careful precision of someone with military training. "Maya Chen," the woman said in accented English. "My name is Dr. Katerina Volkov. I need to talk to you." Maya kept her sidearm drawn but didn't aim it directly at the unexpected visitor. "Volkov, related to Dmitri, my father. He sent me to find you." Katerina's expression was carefully neutral, professional. "The situation is not what it appears to be. Your father's dead." Maya had attended Dmitri's funeral 8 months earlier, after coalition forces overran his training facility. "I saw the body. You saw a body. My father has been working undercover inside coalition intelligence for the past year. He needs to see you before you meet with General Kozlov tonight." Maya studied the young woman's face, looking for tells that would indicate deception. Katerina had Dmitri's eyes pale blue, sharp with intelligence, and the same way of holding herself perfectly still while remaining ready to move instantly. If she was lying, she was exceptionally good at it. "Prove it," Maya said. Katerina reached slowly into her jacket and withdrew a worn leather notebook. She tossed it to Maya, who caught it without taking her eyes off the woman's hands. Maya recognized the notebook immediately. It was Dmitri's training journal, filled with his precise handwriting documenting every lesson he'd taught her over 6 months of intensive preparation. Range calculations, wind reading techniques, psychological profiles of various target types. The pages were yellowed and stained with hues. No one could have fabricated this level of authentic detail. "Turn to page 47, Katerina said. Quietly, Maya flipped through the notebook until she found the right page. There, in Dmitri's familiar handwriting, was a detailed analysis of her psychological profile written after their first month of training. Subject shows exceptional technical aptitude but dangerous emotional attachment to revenge motivation. Father's death has created psychological dependency on hatred as primary driving force. This makes her effective in short term, but potentially unstable for complex operations. Recommend careful management of intelligence regarding Dr. Chen's actual circumstances. Truth might destabilize subject's operational effectiveness entirely. Maya read the passage twice, her hands shaking slightly. "What truth about my father's circumstances?" Katerina gestured toward the forest surrounding the barn. "Walk with me. There are things you need to understand before you meet Kozlov." Maya holstered her weapon, but kept her hand near it as they walked into the woods. Katerina moved like her father, silent, observant, constantly scanning for threats. After 10 minutes, they reached a clearing where someone had built a small fire and arranged logs for seating. "Dmitri is here," Katerina said. An elderly man emerged from behind a cluster of trees, and Maya's breath caught. It was definitely Dmitri Volkov, though he looked older, grayer, with new lines around his eyes. The man she'd mourned was very much alive. "Maya." His voice carried the same mix of affection and professional assessment it always had. "You've grown skilled, but you still let emotion cloud your judgment." Maya's hand moved instinctively toward her weapon, the funeral, the body. You saw what we needed you to see. The resistance required you to believe I was dead so you could operate without suspicion. But the real mission was always more complex than you were told." Dmitri sat on one of the logs and gestured for Maya to join him. She remained standing, every instinct screaming that something was fundamentally wrong. "Explain," she said. "Your father didn't die in a random airstrike," Dmitri said quietly. St. Mary's Hospital was targeted specifically because coalition intelligence believed it was being used as a weapons cache for resistance fighters. The intelligence was accurate there. Were weapons stored in the basement, along with bomb-making materials? Maya felt the world tilt slightly. That's impossible. My father would never. Your father knew nothing about the weapons. But someone in the resistance was using his hospital, his reputation, his humanitarian work as cover for military operations. The coalition had intercepted communications proving this, which is why they authorized the airstrike. Katerina pulled out a tablet and showed Maya a series of photographs. The images showed the basement of St. Mary's Hospital, but instead of medical supplies, Maya saw crates of military weapons, explosive devices, and ammunition. The photos were date-stamped 2 days before the airstrike. No, Maya whispered. This is fake propaganda. Look at the serial numbers on those weapons, Dmitri said gently. Cross-reference them with the Resistance's own inventory records. You'll find they match exactly. Maya stared at the photographs, her mind reeling. If the weapons were real, if the Resistance had been operating out of her father's hospital without his knowledge, then everything she believed about his death was built on a lie. Why are you showing me this? She asked. Because General Kozlov didn't order the airstrike out of cruelty, Katerina said. He ordered it because he believed he was destroying a legitimate military target. And he was right. Dmitri leaned forward. The Resistance leadership knew about the weapons cache. They knew that using your father's hospital would eventually make it a target. But they calculated that the propaganda value of Dr. Chen's death would be worth the sacrifice. Maya sank onto the log beside Dmitri, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. Phoenix Command knew. Phoenix Command planned it, Dmitri said. Your father's death, your recruitment, your training, this entire mission, all of it was designed to create the perfect weapon for a specific purpose. They needed someone with the skill to eliminate Kozlov and the emotional motivation to never question the mission. But I missed, Maya said weakly. No, Katerina said. You were never supposed to kill Kozlov. You were supposed to miss Trigger, the communication blackout, and cause the Resistance to launch Phase 2 into a trap. The goal was to eliminate the most effective Resistance fighters, while making it look like a tactical error, not betrayal. Maya looked up at Dmitri, the man who'd taught her everything she knew about killing, about discipline, about turning grief into precision. You trained me to be a saboteur. Against my own side. I trained you to survive, Dmitri said. And 2. Recognize when you're being used by people who don't deserve your loyalty. The pieces began falling into place with horrible clarity. Phoenix Command's insistence on proceeding with Phase 2 despite Maya's warnings. Marcus Webb's capture at the exact moment he could have prevented the disaster. The sophisticated intelligence that had allowed coalition forces to prepare for every Resistance attack. How long have you known? Maya asked. 18 months, Dmitri said. Since just after your father's death. I was contacted by coalition intelligence and offered a choice work with them to expose the corruption in the Resistance leadership, or watch more hospitals get bombed with innocent doctors inside. Maya stood up abruptly, pacing to the edge of the clearing. So you're all traitors. You, Katerina, probably half the Resistance command structure. We're trying to end a war that's being prolonged by people who profit from the suffering, Katerina said. Both sides have leaders who benefit more from continued conflict than from peace. And what about the people who've died? The fighters who trusted me. Elena's team, the Bridge Assault Group, all of them? Dmitri's expression hardened. They died. Because Phoenix Command sent them into an ambush, not because you missed your shot. The blood is on the hands of the people who betrayed them. Maya pulled out the photograph she'd found at the gas station, Anna Kozlova, smiling next to her father. And this? Is this part of your psychological manipulation too? Katerina studied the photo, her expression softening. Anna died 2 years ago, a resistance bomb targeting a coalition supply convoy. She was traveling with a school group that happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. More innocent deaths, Maya said bitterly. Kozlov changed after that, Dmitri said. He started looking for ways to end the war instead of winning it. That's when coalition intelligence approached me about working together. Both sides have people who are tired of the killing. Maya walked back to the fire and sat down heavily. Every foundation of her beliefs, every motivation that had driven her for the past 18 months, was crumbling. Her father's death wasn't a war crime, it was a tactical decision based on accurate intelligence. Her training wasn't preparation for justice, it was manipulation by people she trusted. Her perfect shot wasn't meant to save lives, it was designed to end them. What happens now? She asked. Tonight, you meet with General Kozlov, Katerina sighed. He's going to propose a ceasefire agreement that could end the fighting in this sector. But it will only work if both sides can eliminate the factions that profit from continued war. You want me to become an assassin for real, Maya said. To kill the resistance leaders who've been using me. Dmitri shook his head. We want you to make your own choice, based on complete information for the first time in 18 months. Phoenix Command used your grief to turn you into a weapon. Now you know the truth. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. Maya stood up and shouldered her pack. I need time to think. You don't have time, Katerina said urgently. Phoenix Command is planning another operation tomorrow night. They're going to attack a coalition medical facility where they believe Kozlov's wounded officers are being treated. But the facility is actually a children's hospital. How do you know this? Because they asked me to provide reconnaissance for the mission, Dmitri said. They still believe I'm dead, so they're working through intermediaries. The attack will kill dozens of children and give Kozlov's hardliners justification for massive retaliation against civilian targets. Maya felt the familiar weight of impossible choices settling on her shoulders. If she walked away from this entire situation, children would die. If she cooperated with Kozlov and Dmitri, she'd be betraying every principle she'd believed in for the past year and a half. If she tried to warn Phoenix Command, she'd be revealing herself as a potential double agent. The meeting tonight, she said finally. Will Kozlov come alone? Yes, Katerina said. He's taking an enormous personal risk. If his own hardliners discover he's negotiating with the resistance, they'll court-martial him for treason. Maya checked her watch 4 hours until sunset. I want to see the intelligence about the hospital attack. Everything you have. Dmitri reached into his pack and withdrew a folder containing satellite photographs, intercepted communications, and tactical planning documents. Maya studied them carefully, her training automatically cataloging the details of the proposed operation. The target was indeed a children's hospital, though intelligence reports suggested it was being used to treat coalition military personnel. The attack plan called for simultaneous strikes on the main building, the emergency generator facility, and the communications center. Estimated civilian casualties: 68 children, 47 medical staff, 12 parents staying with patients. This is genocide, Maya said quietly. This is what happens when war becomes profitable, Dmitri replied. Phoenix Command receives funding from external sources who benefit from regional instability. The longer the conflict continues, the more money flows through their accounts. Maya closed the folder and handed it back. If I meet with Kozlov tonight, what's he proposing? A localized ceasefire, Katerina said. Coalition forces withdraw from civilian areas in this sector. Resistance fighters stop attacking infrastructure targets, and both sides work together to eliminate the extremist factions that profit from continued violence. And you believe he'll honor this agreement? Dmitri stood up and kicked dirt over the fire, preparing to leave. Anna's death changed him. He's lost faith in military solutions. But more importantly, He's facing pressure from his own command structure to escalate the conflict. A negotiated peace is his only way to prevent even worse atrocities. Maya shouldered her pack again, mind racing through the tactical implications of what she'd learned. How do I know this isn't just another layer of manipulation? How do I know you're not coalition intelligence officers running the most sophisticated psychological operation in history? You don't, Katerina said simply. But you'll know tonight when you meet Kozlov face to face. Trust your instincts about people. Dmitri taught you to read human behavior as well as ballistics tables. And if my instincts tell me this is all elaborate bullshit? Dmitri smiled for the first time since they'd started talking. Then you shoot everyone involved and walk away. That's always been an option. As they prepared to separate, Maya realized she had one more crucial question. The resistance fighters captured during Phase 2, are they still alive? Most of them, Katerina said, including Elena Vasquez. Kozlov has been keeping them in a detention facility rather than turning them over to coalition intelligence for interrogation. He's hoping they can be part of a prisoner exchange if negotiations succeed. Maya felt a surge of relief. Elena was alive, which meant Maya hadn't completely failed her people. If there was a chance to save the captured fighters and prevent future atrocities, she had to take it, regardless of the personal cost. Where is the meeting location? She asked. Dmitri pulled out a GPS unit and showed her the coordinates. A small valley 12 miles north of here. There's an old stone bridge over a stream, very symbolic, if you think about it. Kozlov will approach from the east, you from the west. No weapons, no backup, no surveillance. How very romantic, Maya said dryly. Maya, Katerina said as they prepared to part ways. Whatever you decide tonight, remember that you're not responsible for other people's choices. Your father chose to be a doctor in a war zone. Phoenix Command chose to use his hospital for weapons storage. Kozlov chose to order the airstrike. You've been carrying guilt that belongs to other people. Maya nodded, though she wasn't sure she believed it yet. The weight of responsibility for the events of the past 2 days still pressed down on her shoulders like a physical burden. As Dmitri and Katerina disappeared into the forest, Maya began the long hike toward the meeting coordinates. She had 6 hours to cover 12 miles of rough terrain while avoiding coalition patrols, which gave her plenty of time to think about the impossible choice ahead of her: trust an enemy general who claimed to want peace, or remain loyal to resistance leaders who had manipulated her grief for their own purposes. Both sides had blood on their hands. Both sides had reasonable justifications for their actions. Both sides were asking her to betray fundamental principles. Maya had spent 18 months learning to be a weapon. Tonight, she would finally decide who deserved to feel the cutting edge. The stone bridge was exactly as Dmitri had described, ancient, moss-covered, spanning a clear mountain stream in a valley that seemed untouched by the war raging across the surrounding provinces. Maya arrived 30 minutes early and took position on a wooded hillside where she could observe the entire area for signs of ambush or surveillance. The valley was empty except for wildlife. A family of deer grazed near the stream, completely undisturbed by human presence. Birds sang in the trees with the carefree abandon of creatures who had never heard gunfire. For a few minutes, Maya could almost forget that this peaceful place sat at the center of a conflict that had claimed millions of lives. At exactly sunset, a lone figure appeared on the eastern ridge and began walking down toward the bridge. Even at distance, Maya recognized General Viktor Kozlov from her extensive study of intelligence photographs. He moved with the measured pace of a professional soldier, alert but not obviously armed, keeping his hands visible as he approached the meeting point. Maya waited another 10 minutes, scanning for any sign of backup forces or surveillance teams. When she was satisfied that Kozlov had indeed come alone, she emerged from her hiding place and walked down the western slope toward the bridge. They met in the center. Two enemies separated by 3 feet of ancient stone and a war that had defined both their lives. Kozlov was older than his photograph suggested, with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. He wore a simple military uniform without insignia of rank, and Maya noticed that his hands shook slightly, either from cold or from the enormous personal risk he was taking by coming here. "Miss Chen," he said in accented but fluent English. "Thank you for coming." Maya studied his face, looking for signs of deception or hidden agenda. What she saw was exhaustion, grief, and something that might have been hope. "You ordered the airstrike that killed my father," she said. "Yes," Kozlov replied without hesitation. "It was the worst decision I've ever made, and I've made many terrible decisions in this war. Why did you do it?" Kozlov reached slowly into his jacket and withdrew a tablet computer. "May I show you something?" Maya nodded, her hand instinctively moving closer to her concealed sidearm. The tablet displayed a series of surveillance, photographs, and intercepted communications. Maya saw her father's hospital, but also images of weapons being moved into the basement, resistance fighters using medical supply trucks to transport ammunition, and communications intercepts proving that the hospital was being used as a de facto military base. "We monitored the facility for 6 weeks before I authorized the strike," Kozlov said. "Your father had no knowledge of the weapons cache, but our intelligence indicated that a major resistance operation was being planned from that location." Maya scrolled through the evidence, her hands trembling slightly. The documentation was comprehensive, detailed, and completely convincing. Her father's hospital had indeed been used for military purposes without his knowledge or consent. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. "Because you deserve to know the truth. And because I need you to understand that some of the people you trust are not worthy of that trust." Kozlov swiped to a new section of files. Maya found herself looking at financial records, bank transfers, and communications between Phoenix Command and various international arms dealers. The evidence suggested that resistance leadership had been selling weapons to other conflicts, while accepting funding from sources that profited from regional instability. Phoenix Command has received over $40 million in the past year, Kozlov said. Not from governments or humanitarian organizations, but from private military contractors and arms manufacturers who benefit from continued fighting. Maya stared at the financial documents, trying to process their implications. "You're saying the resistance is being funded by people who want the war to continue?" "I'm saying that some people in the resistance leadership have found ways to profit from suffering, just as some people in my command structure have similar motivations." Kozlov showed her another set of documents, this time financial records from coalition sources, revealing kickbacks and profit-sharing arrangements between military contractors and certain coalition generals. The corruption existed on both sides, creating a class of war profiteers who benefited from perpetual conflict. "The people dying in this war, your father, my daughter, the resistance fighters captured yesterday, they're not dying for freedom or security," Kozlov said. "They're dying so that wealthy people in distant cities can increase their profit margins." Maya walked to the edge of the bridge and stared down at the clear water flowing beneath them. Everything she'd believed about this conflict was being systematically dismantled, leaving her without any moral foundation to stand on. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "Help me stop the killing," Kozlov said simply. "Not by winning the war, but by exposing the people who are prolonging it for profit. I'm just a sniper. I'm not a politician or a spy." Kozlov joined her at the edge of the bridge. "You're a symbol. The daughter of Dr. James Chen, trained to perfection, motivated by pure grief. If you publicly support a ceasefire, people will listen. Both sides will listen." Maya turned to face him. "And what about the captured resistance fighters? Elena, Vasquez, and the others?" "Released as part of a prisoner exchange," Kozlov said immediately. along with 37 coalition soldiers currently held by resistance forces. Everyone goes home. You would do this, just like that? Kozlov reached into his other jacket pocket and withdrew the photograph Maya had seen at the gas station, his daughter Anna, smiling and holding his hand. I've lost everything that mattered to me in this war. I won't let other children die for the profit margins of arms dealers. Maya studied the photograph, then looked up at Kozlov's face. The grief she saw there was genuine, unmistakable. This wasn't the calculated emotion of a master manipulator. This was a father who had watched his world burn down around him. There's going to be an attack tomorrow night, Maya said. Phoenix Command is planning to hit what they think is a military medical facility. But it's actually a children's hospital. Kozlov's expression darkened. How do you know this? Dmitri Volkov. He's been working with your intelligence services. Dmitri is alive? Kozlov looked genuinely surprised. We believed him dead. Maya realized that even within this web of double and triple agents, not everyone was fully informed about all the players. He's alive, and he's been feeding information to both sides to prevent the worst atrocities. Kozlov pulled out a satellite phone and speed-dialed a number. He spoke rapidly in Russian for several minutes, his expression growing increasingly grim as the conversation progressed. The hospital has been evacuated, he said when he finished the call. We moved all the children to a secure facility this morning, based on intelligence about a possible attack. But we didn't know the attack was scheduled for tomorrow night. Can you stop it? Not directly. If I interfere with resistance operations too obviously, my own intelligence services will realize I've been compromised. But I can make sure the facility is empty when they attack it. Maya felt a surge of relief. The children would be safe, but the larger problem remained unsolved. Phoenix Command would realize their intelligence had been compromised, which would make future cooperation much more difficult. There's something else, Maya said. I think Phoenix Command has been planning to eliminate me after this mission. Too many loose ends, too much knowledge of their operations. Kozlov nodded grimly. Dmitri suspected the same thing. You've become a liability to people who can't afford to have their methods exposed. So what do you propose? Kozlov walked back to the center of the bridge and turned to face her. We announced the ceasefire publicly. Tomorrow morning, both of us appear at a joint press conference. You as the representative of resistance fighters who want the killing to stop. Me as a coalition commander who's lost faith in military solutions. And then what? Phoenix Command will brand me a traitor. Your hardliners will court-martial you for unauthorized negotiations. Yes, Kozlov said simply. Both of us will be finished in our current roles. But we'll have broken the cycle of violence. At least in this sector. Other regions might follow our example. Maya looked around the peaceful valley, trying to imagine a world where such places existed without the constant threat of violence. You're asking me to sacrifice everything I've worked for. I'm asking you to sacrifice everything you've been manipulated into working for, Kozlov corrected. Your father's death, your training, this entire mission, all of it was designed to serve other people's interests. For the first time since he died, you have a chance to make your own choice about what his life meant. Maya closed her eyes and thought about her father's hands, surgeon's hands, gentle and precise, dedicated to healing rather than harming. He'd taught her that every life had value, that preserving life was always preferable to taking it, that even enemies deserved compassion. She'd spent 18 months learning to be the opposite of everything he'd stood for. If we do this, she said finally, if we announce a ceasefire, how do we know it will hold? How do we know that other commanders on both sides won't just ignore us and continue fighting? Kozlov smiled for the first time since they'd started talking. We make it impossible for them to ignore us. Dmitri has been gathering evidence of war profiteering for months. Financial records, communications, documented proof of how certain people have been deliberately prolonging this conflict. We release everything simultaneously with this ceasefire announcement. Mutual destruction, Maya said. Mutual liberation, Kozlov corrected. We expose the truth about what this war has really become, and we give people on both sides a chance to choose peace over profit. Maya walked back to the center of the bridge and extended her hand to Kozlov. Tomorrow morning, where? Kozlov shook her hand firmly. The old cathedral in Sector 12. It's been abandoned since the fighting started, but it's still standing. Neutral ground, symbolic significance, and enough room for media representatives from both sides. And after the press conference, we see if we've changed anything or if we've just painted targets on our own backs, Kozlov said with dark humor. As they prepared to leave the bridge, Maya realized she had one final question. Why should I trust you? After everything that's happened, why should I believe that this isn't just another layer of manipulation? Kozlov stopped and looked back at her, because 18 months ago, I ordered the airstrike that killed the most decent man in this entire conflict. Your father died because I made a military decision based on accurate intelligence, but that doesn't make his death any less my responsibility. I can't bring him back, but I can try to prevent other good people from dying for bad reasons. Maya watched Kozlov walk back up the eastern ridge until he disappeared into the growing darkness. Then she began her own hike back to the abandoned farm, where she'd spend the night preparing for what might be the most important day of her life. Tomorrow, she would either help end a war or become a target for every faction that profited from its continuation. Either way, she would finally stop being a weapon in other people's hands and start making her own choices about what Dr. James, Chen's daughter, should become. As she climbed through the forest toward her shelter, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced since the day her father died. Hope. Maya spent the night in the abandoned farmhouse, cleaning her weapons and reviewing the intelligence documents Dmitri had provided. By dawn, she'd made her decision about the press conference, but first she needed to contact Elena Vasquez and the other captured resistance fighters to ensure they understood what was happening. The problem was that Kozlov controlled access to the detention facility, and any communication with the prisoners would have to go through coalition channels. Maya would have to trust her new ally completely, with no way to verify that he was keeping his promises. At 0800 hours, Maya's satellite phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Katerina. Press conference confirmed for 1,000 hours at the cathedral. International media already assembling. Phoenix Command is mobilizing rapid response teams to your location. Maya's blood chilled. Phoenix Command had found her, which meant the press conference was about to become a battlefield. She quickly typed back, "How much time do I have?" 30 minutes, maybe less. Dmitri is trying to delay them, but they're moving fast. Maya gathered her equipment and weapons, abandoning everything that wasn't essential for immediate survival. The cathedral was 8 miles away across rough terrain. She'd never make it before the Phoenix teams arrived. If she tried to travel on foot, she needed transportation, and the only option was the old motorcycle she'd spotted in the farm's garage. The bike was at least 20 years old, but the engine turned over after several attempts. Settling into a rough but functional idle, Maya strapped her rifle case to the bike's cargo rack and set off across the mountain roads at dangerous speed, taking curves that would have challenged an experienced rider in perfect conditions. The morning air was bitter cold, and the bike's exposed riding position made her an easy target for anyone with a clear line of sight. As she crested a ridge 5 miles from the cathedral, Maya spotted 2 black helicopters approaching from the South Phoenix Command's Rapid Response Unit, moving fast and low to avoid radar detection. They would reach the cathedral before she did, which meant the press conference was already compromised. Maya's phone buzzed with an incoming call. She answered using her helmet's hands-free system while continuing to race along the mountain road. "Maya, this is Phoenix." She recognized the voice of her original handler, the person she'd known only as a disembodied voice on encrypted communications. "You need to abort the press conference immediately. We have intelligence that it's a coalition trap designed to capture or eliminate key resistance personnel." "Funny," Maya said, leaning into a sharp curve that brought the cathedral into view. In the distance, "I have intelligence that Phoenix Command has been working with arms dealers to prolong this war for profit." A pause, then, "You've been compromised by coalition psychological operations. Kozlov is using sophisticated manipulation techniques to turn you against your own people." "My own people used my father's death to turn me into a weapon," Maya replied, "and then tried to use me to trigger a massacre that would justify continued fighting." "Maya, listen to me very carefully. If you go through with this press conference, you will be responsible for the deaths of every resistance fighter currently in coalition custody. Kozlov has been using them as leverage to force your cooperation." Maya felt her confidence waver slightly. She hadn't been able to verify independently that Elena and the others were safe. Everything she knew about their condition came from Kozlov and Dmitri, both of whom had obvious incentives to manipulate her. "Prove it," she said. "Check your phone. I'm sending you live surveillance footage from the detention facility." Maya's phone buzzed with an incoming video file. She couldn't view it while riding the motorcycle, but the implication was clear. Phoenix Command claimed to have current intelligence about the captured fighter's condition. "You have 2 minutes to abort the press conference," Phoenix continued. "After that, we'll be forced to assume you've been turned by enemy intelligence and act accordingly." Maya could see the cathedral clearly now, along with the news vans and cameras assembled in the square. Several coalition vehicles were positioned around the perimeter, and she could see Kozlov standing near the main entrance with what appeared to be his personal security detail. She also saw the Phoenix Command helicopters circling the area. There, crews preparing to deploy. Maya made a split-second decision that would define the rest of her life. She gunned the motorcycle's engine and roared into the cathedral square at full speed, scattering journalists and security personnel as she headed straight for the front steps. Kozlov's eyes met hers as she brought the bike to a sliding stop at the base of the cathedral steps. In that moment, she saw the same resolve that had brought her here, the willingness to sacrifice everything for a chance at peace. "General," she called out as she dismounted, "are the prisoners safe?" All 47 resistance fighters were released 2 hours ago at the eastern border. Kozlov replied loudly enough for the assembled media to hear. As promised. Maya felt a surge of relief mixed with growing dread as the Phoenix helicopters moved into attack positions above the square. Her former handlers had been bluffing about the prisoners, but they clearly weren't bluffing about their willingness to use lethal force to stop the press conference. "Miss Chen," called a journalist from Reuters, "can you confirm that you're here voluntarily to announce a ceasefire agreement?" Maya looked up at the helicopters, then at the assembled media representatives, then at Kozlov standing calmly despite the obvious danger to his life. This was her moment of choice: trust the intelligence that had guided her entire mission, or trust her own judgment about what she'd observed and experienced. "Yes," Maya said clearly. "I'm here to announce that some wars are worth ending, even when powerful people profit from their continuation." The first sniper shot came from the bell tower of a church across the square, striking the stone steps inches from Maya's feet. Phoenix Command had positioned their own sharpshooters to eliminate her if she couldn't be convinced to abort the mission. Kozlov's security detail immediately moved to shield both Maya and the general, but they were outnumbered and outgunned by Phoenix operatives who had been planning this intervention for hours. "Maya!" Kozlov called out over the chaos. "The evidence, everything we discussed, it's all uploaded to a secure server. Even if they kill us, the truth will still come out." Maya drew her sidearm and returned fire toward the bell tower. training taking over as the peaceful press conference dissolved into a firefight. Journalists scattered for cover behind their vehicles, cameras still rolling as the carefully planned ceasefire announcement turned into exactly the kind of violence it was supposed to prevent. A Phoenix operative rappelled from one of the helicopters, landing between Maya and Kozlov with military precision. Maya recognized him immediately. Captain James Morrison, one of Dmitri's former students, a man she'd trained alongside during her preparation for this mission. "Maya, stand down," Morrison said, his rifle trained on her center mass. "You're making a mistake that will cost thousands of lives." "I'm making a choice for the first time in 18 months, Maya replied, keeping her own weapon aimed at Morrison's chest. "The mistake was trusting people who used my grief as a weapon." "Think about Elena Vasquez," Morrison said. "Think about all the fighters who trusted you to complete this mission. Are you going to betray them for the man who killed your father?" Maya felt the familiar weight of impossible choices settling on her shoulders again. Everything Morrison said was logical, compelling, designed to appeal to her sense of loyalty and duty. But she'd seen the evidence of Phoenix Command's corruption, witnessed Kozlov's genuine grief over his daughter's death, and made her own assessment of the moral landscape surrounding this conflict. "Elena and the others were already released," Maya said. "Check your own intelligence, Captain. The prisoners are safe." Morrison's expression flickered with uncertainty. He pressed his earpiece, listening to communications from his command structure. And Maya saw the exact moment when he realized that Phoenix Command had been lying to him as well. "That's impossible," he said. "Command told us the prisoners were being used as leverage." "Command tells everyone what they need to hear to follow orders," Maya replied. "The question is whether you're going to think for yourself or just follow instructions until everyone you care about is dead." The sniper in the bell tower fired again, this time targeting Kozlov. The general staggered but remained standing, blood spreading across his uniform from a shoulder wound. His security detail returned fire, but they were clearly outmatched by Phoenix operatives with superior positions and equipment. Maya made another split-second decision. Instead of continuing her standoff with Morrison, she holstered her weapon and ran toward Kozlov, applying pressure to his wound while his security team maintained covering fire. "The evidence," Kozlov said through gritted teeth. "Make sure it gets released. Don't let them bury the truth with our bodies." "You're not dying today," Maya said firmly. "Neither of us is dying today." She looked up at Morrison, who was still standing in the middle of the square with his rifle lowered, clearly struggling with the realization that he'd been lied to by his own command structure. "Captain," Maya called out, "you can help us end this, or you can watch more good people die for bad reasons. Your choice." Morrison looked up at the Phoenix helicopters, then at the journalists recording everything from behind cover, then at Maya providing medical aid to an enemy general who had come here, seeking peace. He raised his rifle and began firing at the bell tower. Morrison's decision to join the fight transformed the tactical situation in the cathedral square. His precise fire suppressed the sniper in the bell tower long enough for Kozlov's security detail to advance on the church, while Maya coordinated medical aid for the wounded general using supplies from the scattered news crews. But Phoenix Command had planned for multiple contingencies. As Morrison provided covering fire, 2 more helicopters appeared on the horizon, bringing additional operatives and heavy weapons that would overwhelm any resistance within minutes. "We need to move," Maya told Kozlov as she finished bandaging his shoulder wound. "They're bringing enough firepower to level this entire square." Kozlov struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on Maya for support. "The cathedral has a tunnel system dating to the medieval period. Connects to the old monastery foundations. We can escape underground." Maya looked around the square, calculating distances and timing. The approaching helicopters would be in firing position within 2 minutes, but reaching the cathedral entrance would require crossing 30 meters of open ground under sniper fire. "Morrison," she called out, "can you get us to the cathedral doors?" Morrison ejected an empty magazine and slammed in a fresh one. "Give me 30 seconds to suppress that. Bell tower, then run like hell." Maya helped Kozlov toward the cathedral steps while Morrison laid down suppressing fire with the mechanical precision of someone trained by Dmitri Volkov. The sniper in the bell tower was forced to take cover, giving them a narrow window of opportunity. They reached the cathedral doors just as the reinforcement helicopters arrived. Morrison followed immediately behind them, reloading his rifle as he backed through the entrance. "The tunnel entrance is behind the altar," Kozlov said, breathing heavily. "From blood loss and exertion. There's a hidden switch in the carved stonework." Maya and Morrison helped Kozlov through the cathedral's nave while bullets shattered the stained glass windows above them. The building's thick stone walls provided protection from small arms fire, but the approaching helicopters carried weapons that could penetrate medieval masonry. Behind the altar, Maya found the carved stone panel Kozlov had described. It took precious seconds to locate the hidden mechanism, but finally a section of the floor slid aside, revealing stone steps leading down into darkness. "Maya," Morrison called from the cathedral entrance. "They're deploying from the helicopters. We've got maybe 60 seconds before they breach the doors." Maya helped Kozlov down the first few steps, then turned back to Morrison. "Come on, Captain. Time to go." Morrison looked back at the cathedral doors, then at Maya. "Someone needs to slow them down, buy you time to escape." "That's not your job anymore," Maya said firmly. "You made your choice. Don't throw your life away trying to fix other people's mistakes. Every second they spend fighting me is a second." "They're not chasing you," Morrison replied. "Get the general to safety. Make sure that evidence gets released." Maya wanted to argue, but the sound of Phoenix operatives breaching the cathedral doors made the decision for them. Morrison moved toward the front of the building, while Maya descended into the tunnel with Kozlov. The underground passage was narrow, barely wide enough for two people to walk side by side. Ancient stones dripped with moisture, and the air smelled of centuries of disuse. Maya used her phone's flashlight to navigate while supporting Kozlov's weight. Behind them, the sound of gunfire echoed through the cathedral as Morrison engaged the Phoenix operatives. Maya counted muzzle flashes and estimated at least 12 hostiles, far more than one man could hold off for long. "How far does this tunnel extend?" Maya asked as they moved through the darkness. "Half a mile," Kozlov replied, his voice strained. "Emerges in the basement of the old monastery library. From there, we can reach a vehicle I have positioned for emergencies." The tunnel curved and descended, following the natural contours of the mountainside. Maya's phone showed they'd been walking for 10 minutes when the gunfire behind them finally stopped. Either Morrison had prevailed against impossible odds, or Phoenix Command had eliminated him and would soon be following their trail. "Maya," Kozlov said as they paused to rest at a wider section of the tunnel. "The evidence I mentioned, it's not just financial records. Dmitri has been gathering proof that Phoenix Command has been selling intelligence to coalition hardliners as well. Both sides have factions that benefit from continued war." "What kind of intelligence?" "Resistance safe house locations, planned operations, identities of key personnel. Every major resistance defeat in the past year was the result of intelligence Phoenix Command sold to my hardline colleagues." Maya felt her remaining trust in authority structures crumble completely. They've been playing both sides. "War is profitable when you're selling weapons to everyone involved," Kozlov confirmed. "Phoenix Command receives funding from arms dealers, then sells intelligence to ensure those weapons get used regularly." They reached the end of the tunnel and climbed stone steps to a wooden door that opened into the basement of the abandoned monastery library. The building had been empty since the war began, Its books and manuscripts moved to secure locations to prevent their destruction. Kozlov led Maya through the library to a rear exit where a nondescript sedan was parked behind a cluster of overgrown bushes. He reached under the rear bumper and retrieved a magnetic key box. "Where are we going?" Maya asked as she helped him into the passenger seat. "Dmitri's safe house," Kozlov replied. "He has secure communications equipment and multiple escape routes. From there, we can coordinate the release of all evidence simultaneously." Maya started the car and pulled onto a dirt road that wound through the forest behind the monastery. In the distance, she could see smoke rising from the direction of the Cathedral. Phoenix Command was systematically destroying any evidence that the press conference had ever been planned. "Will the media coverage be enough?" Maya asked. "Enough to expose what's really happening." Kozlov checked his phone, scrolling through news feeds. Several journalists managed to stream the entire confrontation live. "The footage of you providing medical aid to an enemy commander while under fire from your own people is already going viral." Maya felt a mixture of hope and dread. Public attention would make it harder for Phoenix Command to simply eliminate them quietly, but it would also put enormous pressure on both sides to take decisive action. Her phone rang with a call from an unknown number. Maya hesitated, then answered using the car's hands-free system. "Maya Chen," said a voice she recognized as her original Phoenix handler. "You have one final opportunity to correct your mistake. Return General Kozlov to coalition custody, and we'll consider your actions the result of enemy psychological manipulation, rather than treason." "Let me guess," Maya replied. "And in return, you'll ensure I have a tragic accident sometime in the next few weeks." "We're offering you a chance to remember who your real enemies are," the handler said. "Kozlov is responsible for your father's death and the deaths of thousands of resistance fighters. Has your grief made you forget basic loyalty?" Maya looked at Kozlov, who was listening to the conversation with interest despite his obvious pain from the shoulder wound. The man sitting next to her had indeed ordered the airstrike that killed her father, but he'd done so based on accurate intelligence about weapons stored in the hospital. Phoenix Command had put those weapons there, knowing it would eventually make the hospital a target. "My real enemy," Maya said slowly, "is whoever profits from the death of innocent people. And right now, that seems to be Phoenix Command more than anyone else." "You're making a mistake that will cost thousands of lives," the handler said. "I'm correcting a mistake that already has cost thousands of lives," Maya replied, and ended the call. 20 minutes later, they reached Dmitri's safe house, a fortified compound built into a mountainside cave system, virtually invisible from the air and accessible only by a single narrow road. Dmitri and Katerina were waiting for them, along with sophisticated communications equipment and enough firepower to hold off a small army. "Status report," Dmitri said as Maya helped Kozlov into the compound. "Phoenix Command is mobilizing everything they have to stop us," Maya replied. "They've burned the cathedral and are probably tracking this vehicle. How long before they find this location?" 6 hours, maybe 8, Katerina said. "Enough time to upload all evidence to multiple servers and coordinate simultaneous release through international media outlets." Dmitri helped Kozlov onto a medical cot and began cleaning and rebandaging his wound with professional efficiency. "The captain who helped you at the cathedral, Morrison, is alive, wounded, but he managed to escape through a side entrance. He's requesting extraction to a neutral location." Maya felt a surge of relief. Morrison had chosen to help them despite years of conditioning and loyalty to Phoenix Command, and she'd feared his decision would cost him his life. "Can we get him here safely?" Maya asked. "Already arranged," Katerina replied. "He'll arrive within the hour, along with Elena Vasquez and 3 other resistance fighters who were released this morning." Maya stared at Katerina in surprise. "Elena's coming here?" "She wants to hear your explanation directly," Dmitri said. According to Morrison, she's having doubts about Phoenix Command's leadership after learning about the prisoner release discrepancy. Maya felt the weight of impending confrontation. Elena had been her closest friend in the resistance, someone who'd trusted Maya completely and followed her tactical recommendations without question. Explaining why she'd apparently defected to work with the enemy would test their friendship. Beyond anything Maya could imagine, while they waited for Elena's arrival, Dmitri and Katerina worked frantically to upload terabytes of evidence to secure servers around the world. Financial records, intercepted communications, documented proof of arms dealing, intelligence sales, and war profiteering, everything needed to expose the corruption that had prolonged this conflict for the benefit of wealthy distant interests. Upload. Progress is at 60%, Katerina reported. But Phoenix Command is jamming our satellite links. They're using military-grade electronic warfare equipment. Kozlov, despite his wound, had been coordinating with coalition moderates through encrypted channels. My people report that Phoenix Command has contacted coalition hardliners directly. They're proposing a joint operation to eliminate both of us as rogue elements, threatening the war effort. Maya checked her weapons and ammunition while processing the implications. So now we're facing enemies from both sides. We always were, Dmitri said grimly. The difference is that now it's out in the open. A vehicle approached the compound Morrison's extraction team, arriving with Elena and the other released prisoners. Maya watched through security monitors as her former comrades emerged from armored vehicles, all of them heavily armed and clearly uncertain about the situation they were walking into. Elena Vasquez looked exactly as Maya remembered, compact. Fierce, with the calculating eyes of someone who'd survived too many battles against overwhelming odds. But there was something new in her expression, a wariness that hadn't been there before her capture. "Maya," Elena called out as she entered the compound. "I need to hear this from you directly. Did you betray the resistance to work with coalition forces?" Maya met Elena's eyes steadily. "I discovered that the resistance leadership has been betraying all of us for profit. Everything we've fought for, everyone who's died, it's been orchestrated to benefit arms dealers and war profiteers." "That's a serious accusation," Elena said. "Do you have proof?" Dmitri handed Elena a tablet containing the financial evidence they'd gathered. Elena scrolled through bank transfers, communications intercepts, and documented proof of Phoenix Command's corruption, her expression growing darker with each revelation. $40 million, Elena said quietly. "While we were eating protein bars and sleeping in abandoned buildings, Phoenix Command was receiving $40 million from arms manufacturers." "It gets worse," Morrison said, stepping forward. "I've been reviewing my own mission files. Every major resistance defeat in the past year was preceded by intelligence requests from Phoenix Command about our target locations and planned operations." Elena looked up from the tablet, her face pale. "They were selling our operational intelligence to coalition forces." "Not to coalition forces," Kozlov corrected from his medical cot. "To specific coalition commanders who benefit from continued fighting. My hardline colleagues were paying Phoenix Command for information, then using it to eliminate moderate resistance leaders while leaving the profitable war intact." Maya watched Elena process this information, seeing her friend's worldview crumble. In real time, the resistance they'd both served faithfully had been a profit center for people who viewed their lives as acceptable losses in a larger financial strategy. "The attack on the children's hospital," Elena said suddenly. "The one scheduled for tomorrow night. Phoenix Command briefed me on it before I was captured. They said it was a critical target." "It's a children's hospital," Maya said firmly. 68 children, 47 medical staff. Phoenix Command planned the attack specifically to provoke massive coalition retaliation against civilian targets. Elena's hands shook as she set down the tablet. "How many operations were like this? How many times did we attack targets specifically, chosen to escalate the conflict?" Every operation for the past 18 months, Dmitri said. Phoenix Command has been engineering incidents designed to prevent peace negotiations and ensure continued weapon sales. The compound's alarm system activated vehicle sensors detecting multiple approaching threats. Katerina checked the security displays and cursed in Russian. Phoenix Command rapid response teams approaching from 3 directions, she reported. ETA 4 minutes. At least 40 operatives. Heavy weapons, air support inbound. Maya felt the familiar clarity of imminent combat settle over her. Upload status? 87%, Katerina replied. We need 3 more minutes. Elena, Maya said, turning to her friend. I know this is overwhelming, but I need to know, are you with us or against us? Elena looked around the compound at the assembled Group Resistance Fighters Coalition. Moderates, defectors from both sides united by their discovery of systematic betrayal. Then she looked at the security monitors showing Phoenix Command operatives preparing to assault their position. I'm with the truth, Elena said simply, and began checking her weapons. Morrison coordinated defensive positions while Maya and Dmitri established fields of fire to cover the compound's approaches. Kozlov, despite his wound, provided intelligence about Phoenix Command's tactical procedures and likely assault patterns. They'll use the standard 3-team approach, Kozlov predicted. Direct assault on the main entrance, flanking maneuvers from both sides. Air support to prevent escape through the rear passages. Upload at 95%, Katerina called out. The first explosions rocked the compound as Phoenix Command began their assault with military-grade explosives. Maya took position at a reinforced firing port and began engaging targets with the precision that had made her the Resistance's most effective sniper. Through her scope, she recognized several of the attacking operatives, people she'd trained with, fought alongside, trusted with her life. Now they were trying to kill her to protect a conspiracy that had made their sacrifices meaningless. Upload complete, Katerina announced. Evidences now live on servers in 12 countries, uploaded simultaneously to major news outlets worldwide. Maya's phone buzzed with notifications as news organizations began broadcasting the evidence in real time. Financial records, audio recordings, documented proof of arms dealing and intelligence sales, everything Phoenix Command had tried to hide was now public knowledge. The assault on the compound suddenly intensified as Phoenix Command realized their secret was out. Helicopter gunships began strafing the mountainside, while ground teams advanced under covering fire. They're not trying to capture us anymore, Morrison observed grimly. Now they're just trying to eliminate witnesses. Maya switched to her Barrett rifle and began engaging the helicopters with armor-piercing rounds. The first aircraft took critical damage and was forced to withdraw, but 2 more appeared on the horizon. Maya, Elena called from across the compound. We need to talk. Elena had been monitoring news feeds on her phone while coordinating ammunition distribution. Her expression showed a mixture of hope and determination that Maya hadn't seen since the early days of the resistance. The evidence is working, Elena said. News organizations worldwide are reporting on war profiteering. The UN Security Council is calling an emergency session. Both coalition and resistance political leadership are distancing themselves from their military commands. Maya felt a surge of cautious optimism. Public pressure might actually end this war. But first we have to survive the next 30 minutes. Elena replied as another explosion shook the compound. Morrison appeared at Maya's position, blood streaming from a head wound. Phoenix Command is calling for coalition air support. There, claiming we're a terrorist cell with weapons of mass destruction. Will the coalition respond? Maya asked. Kozlov answered from his position near the communications equipment. Not if I can help it. He spoke rapidly into a secure radio using authorization codes that apparently carried significant weight. After several tense minutes, he looked up with relief. Coalition air support has been denied. My moderate colleagues are asserting command authority. The ground assault continued for another 20 minutes, but Maya could sense the attackers. Momentum weakening. Phoenix command operatives were realizing that they were fighting to protect a conspiracy that was already fully exposed, making their sacrifice pointless. Finally, the assault stopped entirely. Maya watched through her scope as Phoenix command teams withdrew to their vehicles and departed, leaving behind several wounded operatives who were immediately taken into custody by arriving coalition moderate forces. 3 weeks later, Maya stood in the same cathedral square where the press conference had nearly cost her life. The building had been restored, its windows replaced, bullet holes in the stonework repaired. Today, it hosted a very different kind of gathering, a formal signing ceremony for the ceasefire agreement that had emerged from the evidence Chen Kozlov had risked everything to expose. Elena stood beside her, now serving as the elected representative of resistance fighters who had chosen peace over perpetual conflict. Morrison, recovered from his wounds, represented coalition moderates who had seized control from the hardliners. Kozlov, his arm still in a sling, signed the document as the coalition's official negotiator. The ceremony was simple, dignified, and remarkably free of the theatrical elements that had characterized most wartime propaganda events. Representatives from both sides acknowledged the systematic manipulation they had all endured, committed to transparency in future governance, and established mechanisms for investigating remaining corruption. The Phoenix Command trials begin next month, Elena told Maya as they watched Kozlov sign the final page of the agreement. 17 defendants, including your original handler. They're facing charges in international court. Maya nodded, feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Justice was being served, but it couldn't bring back the people who had died for the profit margins of arms dealers. What will you do now? Elena asked it. Maya looked around the square, noting the presence of children playing near the fountain while their parents conducted business in newly reopened shops. The scene was almost exactly what her father had described during their last conversation, normal life returning to places that had known only violence. Dmitri offered me a position training medical personnel for post-conflict reconstruction, Maya said. Using precision skills to save lives instead of taking them. Sounds like something Dr. Chen would approve of, Elena said with a smile. Kozlov approached them as the ceremony concluded, moving carefully due to his healing wound. Miss Chen, I wanted to thank you personally. Your courage made this possible. Maya studied the man who had ordered the airstrike that killed her father. In the weeks since their first meeting, she'd learned more about the circumstances surrounding that decision. The weapons cache Phoenix Command had placed in the hospital. The intelligence reports that had made the medical facility appear to be a legitimate military target. The impossible choices that war forced on decent people. General, Maya said formally, will this ceasefire hold? It will if we remain vigilant about the people who profit from its failure, Kozlov replied. There will always be those who benefit from conflict. Our job is to ensure they never again gain the power to manipulate good people into killing each other. As the crowd dispersed, Maya walked to the place where she had provided medical aid to Kozlov under fire from her own people. Someone had placed a small memorial plaque there, not for any individual, but for all those who chose peace over profit. Maya's phone buzzed with a message from Katerina. New intelligence suggests arms dealers are already trying to establish operations in the African conflicts. Interested in preventing another Phoenix Command situation? Maya looked at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Send me the details." Some skills were too valuable to waste, even when their original purpose had been perverted by others. Maya had learned to be a weapon, but she had also learned to make her own choices about when and how that weapon should be used. Dr. James Chen had dedicated his life to healing. His daughter would dedicate hers to preventing the kind of manipulation that made healing necessary. Maya pocketed her phone and walked toward the cathedral, where Dmitri was waiting with detailed briefings about new threats and new opportunities. To protect innocent people from those who would exploit their suffering. She had missed her perfect shot 18 months ago, but in doing so, she had discovered something more important than perfect accuracy, the wisdom to choose her own targets. War was over. The real work was just beginning. Maya adjusted the scope on her rifle, calculating distance, elevation, and wind speed with the mechanical precision that had become second nature. 3,000 meters below, her target moved through the marketplace. Completely unaware of the crosshairs centered on his chest, Viktor Marchenko, arms dealer, war profiteer, and architect of weapons trafficking networks across 3 continents. The man who had funded Phoenix Command, provided the explosives that had killed Anna Kozlova, and was currently negotiating to supply weapons to both sides of a developing conflict in West Africa. Maya's finger rested on the trigger, her breathing steady, her heart rate dropped to 50 beats per minute. Perfect shooting conditions, perfect intelligence, perfect opportunity to eliminate a man whose death would save thousands of lives. She exhaled slowly and took up the slack in the trigger. Then she picked up her radio and transmitted on the frequency. Monitored by international law enforcement. Target confirmed at coordinates 34.7128 N, 86.5861 W. All supporting evidence uploaded to secure servers. Recommend immediate arrest before he completes the arms transfer. Maya watched through her scope as unmarked vehicles surrounded the marketplace. Law enforcement officers moving with coordinated precision to apprehend Marchenko before he could escape or destroy evidence. Some targets deserved bullets. Others deserved justice. Maya had learned the difference. As she packed her rifle and prepared to leave the mountainside observation post, Maya's phone buzzed with a message from her father's former colleague at St. Mary's Hospital. The new trauma center is complete. Dr. Chen Memorial Wing opens next week. Would Maya Chen like to attend the dedication ceremony? Maya smiled as she typed her response. Dr. Chen's daughter will be there. The perfect shot wasn't always the one that killed the target. Sometimes the perfect shot was the one that chose not to fire, creating space for better solutions to emerge. Maya had spent 18 months learning to be a weapon. She had spent the last 6 months learning to be something more, a surgeon's daughter, who had found her own way to heal the world. As she hiked down the mountain toward her extraction point, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced since childhood. Pride in who she was becoming, rather than shame about what she had done. The war was over. The healing had begun, and Maya Chen had finally learned to aim for hope instead of revenge. If this story moved you, challenged you, or simply entertained you during your commute, workout, or quiet evening, I hope you'll show your support by subscribing to our channel. Your subscription doesn't just help us continue creating these immersive, novel-length stories, it's also your way of joining a community of people who appreciate thoughtful, complex narratives that don't insult your intelligence. Please take a moment to like this video if you enjoyed Maya's journey from vengeance to wisdom, and share it with anyone who appreciates stories that explore the gray areas between right and wrong. Ring that notification bell to ensure you never miss our latest epic adventures. In the comments below, let me know what you thought of Maya's final choice. Did she make the right decision? What would you have done in her situation? Your thoughts and discussions make these stories come alive beyond the telling. Until our next adventure together, remember that the most perfect shot isn't always the one that hits its target. Sometimes it's the one that chooses not to fire at all. Subscribe now, and let's explore more incredible stories together.